Before studying fundamental rights, parliament, or the judiciary, we must first understand the philosophy that binds the entire constitution together, the preamble. Hello everyone, my name is Rajni Jha. Welcome to Drishti IAS. So the American Constitution was the first to begin with the preamble, and many countries, including India, after that followed this practice. What is a preamble? Preamble is the introduction or preface to the Constitution, and it basically contains the summary of the Constitution. So we have a lot to unpack in today's session. Let's get started. So first of all, there was something called Objectives Resolution. Jawaharlal Nehru introduced Objectives Resolution in the Constituent Assembly on 13th December 1946. Then it was adopted on 22nd January 1947, and this later became the basis of preamble. Objectives Resolution later became the basis of preamble. Now the preamble gives us information about four different things. First, the source of the Constitution. Second, nature of Indian state. Third, the objectives or goals we are trying to achieve as a country. And fourth, the date of its adoption. The first is source of the Constitution. In the first line itself, it says, "We the people of India." What does it mean? This means that the power or authority given to Constitution comes from people of India. It is in the hands of people of India. See, the government that comes into power gets the power from Constitution. Constitution gets the power from people of India. So ultimately, all the power resides with people of India. And this is the concept of popular sovereignty. This is the concept of popular sovereignty. So the first line itself actually depicts popular sovereignty in India. That Constituent Assembly definitely drafted and adopted preamble, but they did so on the behalf of people. People are all powerful. Next is nature of Indian state. These words, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, these show the nature of Indian state, and we will talk about them one by one. Next is justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are the objectives or goals that we try to achieve as a country. And finally, in the last para, it says 26th day of November 1949 is the date where we adopted it. So the date of adoption is also given 26th November 1949. Now we are done with the first part, that the source of power or authority to the Constitution of India is people of India. We will talk about the nature of Indian state now, and the first word that is given is sovereign. What is sovereign? Sovereign means supreme power to govern oneself. Now see, India is independent. India is not dependent on anyone. India is not a dominion. India is independent in its internal and external matters. What does that mean? That within territory of India, India can make whatever decisions, policies it wants, and there will be no one that could force India to make the decisions accordingly, right? And this is called internal sovereignty within the territory of India. It is called internal sovereignty. And similarly, India can also make its foreign policies without any force or coercion from the outside. That is called external sovereignty. So India has both internal sovereignty and external sovereignty. Now there is a criticism that is given here that India's membership in organizations like United Nations or Commonwealth, these show that the sovereign nature of India has diluted. But the counter argument that is given is, we are a part of these organizations, yes, but out of our own volition, out of our own will. We are voluntarily a part of it. Nobody is forcing us. So we are practicing sovereignty here as well. Next word is socialist. Now this word was added in 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. In fact, in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976, there were three words that were added in the preamble. You can remember them with this acronym, SIS, socialist, secular, and this is integrity. So these three words were added in preamble in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Now what is socialist? In socialist, the state tries to reduce inequalities and ensure that there is social and economic justice. Now you have to remember that in India, we have democratic socialism. We don't have communist socialism. What is the difference? In communist socialism, the state has all the control. There is no concept of private property. Whereas in democratic socialism, there is mixed economy. Both private and public property, they coexist. The government is going to regulate private properties, but it is not going to abolish it completely. So we have democratic socialism with the influence of both Marxist socialism and Gandhian socialism. So in our type of socialism, Indian type of socialism, we have democratic socialism with influence of both Marxism, that is Marxist socialism, and Gandhian socialism. What is that? The Gandhian influence shows in welfare of state, welfare of all, village development, and in social harmony. And Marxism, you know, Marxism is all about inequalities in society and how can we get rid of them. So this idea that we are trying to reduce inequalities and we are trying to protect workers, that comes from Marxist socialism. So Indian socialism is democratic socialism with influence of both Marxist socialism and Gandhian socialism. Now next is secular. Now in fact here there is one more criticism that is given, and that is after LPG, liberalization, globalization and privatization, what we did was there was more focus on private sector. Now that diluted the socialist nature. But if we look at our constitution, it is specifically mentioned here and in fundamental rights and in the DPSPs also. So according to constitutional values, we are still socialist. Next is secular. Now, as I told you, this word secular was also added in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. And secular means that there will be separation between center, the state and religion. So there will not be any official religion of the state. That is called secular. Now secularism also is of two types. That is, there is positive secularism and negative secularism. Now that does not mean good or bad. Negative secularism simply means that there is complete separation between state and religion. There will be no interference whatsoever. But in case of positive secularism, what we do is we give equal respect to all the religion and we practice something called principled distance. What is that? Principled distance means that we will be distant. Of course, the state will be distant from religion, but at the same time, if there is a need, then the state can interfere in religion as well, in the religious sphere as well. What can be the need? The need can be for social reform, equality or justice, as we have seen in India, that the state has interfered in religious affairs. And you will give me examples of the cases where state has interfered in religious affairs. So India has positive secularism. Next is democratic. Now the word democratic means that power ultimately lies with people. We already know that. In India, we have indirect democracy. Now what is that? Democracy can be of two types, direct democracy and the other one is indirect democracy. See, in a direct democracy, people directly participate in the decision making. So for example, there's a decision that has to be made whether this territory should be a part of this country or not. In that case, all the people will vote on that matter and then the decision will be taken. That is the example of direct democracy. But in a country like India, where there are so many people, it is completely heterogeneous and there is so much diversity, direct democracy is not very practical. So we adopted indirect democracy, where we choose our representatives and those representatives take decisions on our behalf. That is called representative democracy or indirect democracy. So in India, we have indirect or representative democracy, and in that also we have specifically gone for parliamentary form of democracy. So India has indirect or representative parliamentary democracy, and we have also adopted universal adult franchise, which means every adult, that is citizens 18 years and above, they have right to vote irrespective of where they are born, their caste, place of birth, religion, whatever. Next is republic. Now what is republic? There is another word related to this that you should know, that is monarchy. What is monarchy? In monarchy, the head of the state is hereditary, for example, king or queen. But in republic, the head of the state is elected, whether directly or indirectly. So this shows that public office is open for everyone. Now, of course, there is eligibility criteria, but apart from that, there is no privilege based on which family you're born into. So head of state is, in India especially, the head of state is indirectly elected. Who is the head of state? In India, the head of the state is the president, and the president is indirectly elected. So we are republic. Next, now that we are done with the kind of Indian state polity that we have, we are done with that. Now we will talk about the goals or objectives that are given in the constitution, the goals that we are trying to achieve as a country. And the first objective, the first ideal or goal is justice. Justice, social, economic and political justice, all the three justices, not just one. Social, economic and political justice, all the three. What does that mean? Social justice would mean equality in society. Everybody will be treated equally and nobody will be discriminated against based on the place of birth or the caste, gender, whatever, right? Next is economic justice. What does that mean? Economic justice means nobody will be discriminated based on the wealth they have. Inequalities based on wealth, income or opportunity, they will be reduced. And third is political justice. What is political justice? Political justice would mean that there will be equal political rights and everybody will have equal rights to participate in political process and offices. So we ensure all the three kinds of justice: social, economic, and political justice. And this concept of social, economic, and political justice was influenced by Russian Revolution 1917. Now this is important. Next is liberty. Everybody will have freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship. That means you'll have the freedom to think freely, to express your opinion, and to follow any religion that you want to, faith or religion that you want to. But having freedom does not mean you'll have absolute freedom. Your freedom can be restricted on the grounds of sovereignty or public order, morality, or national security. Next is equality, equality of status and opportunity. That means no matter what your social standing is, you will have the right to life and live with dignity. Actually, you'll be respected. Your rights will be respected. You'll have dignity. It does not matter what your social standing is. And similarly, you will also have equality of opportunity, meaning you'll get every opportunity, equal chances to progress yourself, your life. And that will happen through education, that will happen through employment. So all these opportunities will be given to you irrespective of wherever you're born in the society, what your social standing is. Next is fraternity. Now, fraternity simply means brotherhood, feeling of mutualness, that we are together, we all are living in the same country, there is solidarity. That is fraternity. Now, the preamble says that fraternity, this feeling of brotherhood, should ensure first, dignity of the individual, and second, unity and integrity. Let's understand this. Dignity of the individual, you must have understood that we will give them equal rights, we will protect them equally so that they have right to a dignified life, and this ensures dignity of the individual. Next is unity and integrity. What is the difference? Unity is a psychological concept that we all are a part of the same country, of the same nation. That is unity. So brotherhood should ensure unity. Psychologically, we should feel like we are a part of the same nation. And integrity. Integrity is territorial integrity. What is territorial integrity? That the territorial boundaries will remain intact. No part of India will try to break apart or move away or secede. So fraternity should ensure dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nation. And these ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, they were inspired from French Revolution 1789. Now comes two very important judgments. First is Berubari Union case. In this case, so the question was, is preamble a part of the constitution? In Berubari Union case 1960, the Supreme Court said no, it is not a part of the constitution. But in the Keshav Nand Bharti case 1973, the Supreme Court reverted its previous verdict and said no, preamble is a part of the constitution. It's just that it is not enforceable. So if there is something given in the preamble, you cannot approach court saying, oh, this is in the preamble, but we have not been given this. You cannot do that. It is not a source of power. So it is not enforceable. It is not a source of power, neither a source of power, not a source of limitation. You can't even say, oh, this is given in the preamble, so the government cannot do that. So neither does it provide power, nor does it limit the power of government. It simply helps interpret the constitution. That's what it was said. And then comes the last part. Can preamble be amended? So the answer is yes, it can be amended. How? See, in the Keshav Nand Bharti case, Supreme Court said that preamble is a part of the constitution, and because constitution can be amended, so preamble can also be amended under Article 368. It's just that in the same case, Supreme Court said that there is something called basic features of the constitution, basic structure doctrine. Those basic features of the constitution cannot be amended or taken away. That's what it meant. Now, secularism I told you about. Secularism is a part of the basic feature of the constitution. So it cannot be taken away. This is an example. So in the Keshav Nand Bharti case, Supreme Court said that yes, preamble can be amended, but the basic features of the constitution cannot be taken away. And this is extremely important. In the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, as I've already told you, there were 3 words that were added: socialist, secular, and integrity. Now let's come to the last part of the lecture, which is a question for you. I really hope that you've understood everything. So let's answer this question. The question says, consider the following statements regarding preamble to the Constitution of India. First, the preamble is based on objectives resolution moved by Jawaharlal Nehru. Second, the words socialist, secular, and integrity were added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Third, the preamble is a source of power for the union and state governments. And fourth, the Supreme Court in Keshav Nand Bharti case held that preamble is a part of the Constitution. You have to tell me which of these is correct. So that's it for today's session. There are other topics also that I've covered in Polity Simplified Series. So if you haven't watched them, please go ahead and watch them from the playlist. So that's it for today's session. I really hope that you enjoyed the lecture. Until next time, take care.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.